So there's been interesting articles that have come out on Carson Wentz. You might have known, like early last week, Doug Pederson was relieved of his duties as head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of people did not like how it went down. They felt like Doug Pederson got a raw deal here. He was the first coach in Eagles history to deliver a Super Bowl championship to the city of Philadelphia. Not even Andy Reid did that. Now, Andy Reid got the Chiefs a Super Bowl and is probably likely to have another Super Bowl appearance if they can get by the Buffalo Bills on Sunday. But this article comes out of the Philadelphia Daily News. Jeff McClain wrote this article, and we're going to start off, and it says, Howie Roseman had a life-size poster of Carson Wentz in his office at the NovaCare complex. It still might be there, but before COVID-19 placed restrictions on Eagles staffers' movements, when anyone walked into the general manager's office, there up on the wall was Wentz in action. The decal, like a fathead a fan might plaster in his or her bedroom, became an inside joke among some staff about Roseman's affection for the Eagles franchise quarterback. But it also became a symbol for his misdirected handling of an employee. Wentz had once been the centerpiece of Roseman's return to personnel power, his most audacious acquisition. And when the quarterback initially proved the GM right, he loomed large, figuratively and literally, over nearly every decision he made for the next 4 years. But for many in the Eagles organization, Wentz loomed too large, and the consequence was a young man given far too much reign before he earned hollow space on the team facility wall. The die had been cast the day the Eagles drafted the North Dakota State product in 2016, after they forfeited a ransom to move up to the number 2 spot. But when they doubled down with a contract extension 3 years later, the defication of Wentz increased, and it would sometimes play to his worst impulses. When you believe you found the great white whale of team sports, an elite quarterback, you hold on for dear life and you feed the beast. For the first 2 years, the Eagles on the surface appeared to do everything right with Wentz, but a knee injury in 2017 and Nick Foles taking over and winning the Super Bowl altered the dynamic. Roseman, owner Jeffrey Lurie, and other Eagles leaders, however, treated Wentz as if he won that championship, which he didn't win. Nick Foles won that Super Bowl. They allowed him too much influence in the draft, free agency, and coaching decisions. And while he played a large role in getting to the title game and to the postseason the next 2 years, he has only 6 playoff snaps in 5 years to his name. For 3 straight years, injuries would end Wentz's season. The Eagles still believed in him last offseason after a concussion knocked him out of the playoff loss to the Seahawks. But drafting Jalen Hurts in the second round was, if anything, insurance for an often injured quarterback. It was the first time the franchise had shown an inkling of doubt, and Wentz would subsequently have the worst season of his career, and based on passer ratings, the worst decline for an under 30 starting NFL quarterback in 70 years. But Hurts was just one piece to the puzzle. The forces behind Wentz's regressions were manifold and in many ways there for years. He didn't always take to hard coaching. He struggled with accountability. He could shrink back into a tight-knit group of teammates he trusted or become isolated. Wentz's type A personality could be credited just as much for his past success. Many top quarterbacks share the same trait, but the 28-year-old had increasingly rebuffed advice, defied criticism, and clashed with former coach Doug Pederson last season. And this is coming from an Eagles source. Quote, every great quarterback wants to be coached, and they want to be coached hard and by the best. It doesn't seem like Wentz wants that, said one source. It's kind of like who's ever coaching him is working for him, but it can't be that way. While Wentz at times could be his own worst enemy, many of the reasons for his decline were outside of his control. The Eagles endured a rash of injuries, particularly on the offensive line, and used 14 different combinations in 16 games. The receivers and tight ends were often either hurt or inexperienced. Pederson's offense also had become predictable. and Press Taylor, who had been given the keys to Wentz and the passing game, had been considered by many on the team the wrong coach for the job. When Pederson suggested to Lurie after the season that he planned to promote Taylor to offensive coordinator, it was fate accomplished. The owner was already questioning whether the coach could be still paired with Wentz, but there was no way he would allow all three to return. Wentz alone also factored into Pederson's exit. Despite Lurie's claim otherwise, the Eagles essentially remained married to the quarterback, as Roseman had put it at the time of the Hurts pick, but not because of his play this time, but because of his expanding contract. And Pederson's relationship with his quarterback had become splintered, if not fractured. This is according to Quincy Mortensen. And what might have sealed his fate was the answer he gave Lurie on his plans for the position. It's unclear what Pederson said. He asked colleagues for their opinions on what to do after his initial meeting with Lurie and seemed surprised when it was suggested he keep both quarterbacks, a source said. Wentz, meanwhile, hasn't spoken publicly since he was moved from the Packers game on December 6th. It was unlikely that he would talk while Hurts was starting, but he turned down the opportunity after the season when he could have rebutted reports and his relationship with Pederson and that he wanted to be traded. There was a disconnect even before Wentz was benched, though. Pederson will call a play only for his quarterback to occasionally kill it for apparently no other reason than his personal distaste, a source claimed. It became a pissing match between the two, one of the other sources said. And he goes on to say, the trust in the NFL building goes far. Before Pederson was fired, coming from a source. If there's communication and trust, everything goes faster and it goes further. And if you lose either one of those, it's going to be hard to come back from. The information in this story was compiled from reporting from the team and NFL sources with direct knowledge of the inner workings of the Eagles in relation to Wentz. The sources requested anonymously because they were either unauthorized to speak publicly about the subject or they feared retribution. Pederson, Taylor, and Wentz declined to comment, whether directly or through a representative. Roseman and Lurie have publicly endorsed Wentz's return and deemed the 2020 season a blip, although a new coach could have a different evaluation. Nevertheless, they reinforced their commitment to him. Roseman compared Wentz to fingers on your hand the day after the Eagles finished a woeful 4-11-1 and their long-held belief in his character. And Roseman says he's a great guy and he wants nothing but to win big and win Lombardi trophies for Philadelphia, Lurie said Monday. The guy is tireless, he has his heart in the right place, and he's really dedicated this offseason, in-season. He's just what you want. And then it goes on to talk about resistant to coaching. Wentz does want to win. He is tireless, he is dedicated. No one publicly has ever suggested otherwise, and the same seemingly holds privately. But his resistance to hard instruction made him lose faith from coaches, and unwillingness to accept blame for his mistakes hurt him in the locker room. He doesn't understand that he lost games for us, a veteran player said. He will never admit that, and that's a problem because he can't get it corrected. There are Eagles who supported Wentz throughout the season and some who continued to defend him after the season, but there was a sentiment among various coaches and players that he needed to do a better job taking the external and internal blows for the team, even if he wasn't always at fault. The leadership and the best do it almost indistinctly because when there is another mistake, a drop pass, a false start, for example, he can go back to that play and proudly tell him that he needs to clean up his performance. In the quarterback room, when his errors are pointed out, Wentz would sometimes make irrelevant excuses and Taylor wouldn't correct them. For instance, there would be a play when he didn't throw to an open receiver. The read was drawn up as designed, and the coverage played out as expected, and he would be asked why didn't he pull the trigger. And Wentz would say that the look wasn't there, or he would overemphasize the pass rush, and when it was suggested that the play be run again in practice as to get it right, he would object. John DeFilippo, Wentz's first quarterback coach with the Eagles, coached him hard. Former offensive coordinator Frank Wright did as well. They had years of experience, though, and Wentz was just entering the NFL when he worked under them. Peterson didn't have to be the bad cop because he had DeFilippo and Frank Wright. When he promoted Mike Groh to offensive coordinator after Wright left to become the Colts head coach, he had someone who would play that role, although with a softer touch. Wentz would fight back, and Groh, who had never previously been an NFL coordinator, eventually learned when to pick his battles. But they struggled to see eye to eye, with Wentz focused more on playing to his strengths and Groh's scheming plays to counter a defense that divided a prominent reason why the latter was fired last offseason. Taylor was an offensive quality control coach when Wentz was drafted. He was a holdover from the Chip Kelly regime and would become an assistant Pederson would mentor. Taylor worked primarily with the quarterbacks from 2016 and 2017 and in-game planning specialized in gadget plays. He has been credited with digging up the design for the Philly special in the Super Bowl 52. When DeFilippo left to become the Vikings offensive coordinator, Taylor was seen as a natural replacement. Wright said that he would have taken him to Indianapolis if possible. But there was internal concern that Wentz's friendship with Taylor could cause a conflict of interest and that his inexperience could allow for the quarterback to overpower him. His nurturing style of coaching was also antithetical to DeFilippo. Pederson knew Taylor needed time, which is one of the reasons why he didn't promote him to offensive coordinator after Groh left. He made him pass game coordinator instead, on the top of quarterbacks coach, and hired Wright, Scangarello, and Marty Mornaway as senior offensive assistants. Now, there was more to read, but, it's not talking about Wentz. But let me get my opinion on this. This was a damning article that came out on Carson Wentz. And if all this stuff turns out to be true, then you have to cut ties with Carson Wentz. Because you can't have a guy that doesn't respond to coaching, that doesn't respond well to criticism. Carson Wentz should have spoke to the media and cleared this mess up. By you not speaking to the media, there's going to be a whole lot of speculations about things coming out. There's going to be speculations on your character. There's going to be speculations on how you are with the teammates. You have to come out there and clear up everything. If I'm in that position, if I had a bad season, I'm going to come out there and I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to say, yeah, we've had our issues. We argued here and there. Yeah, some teammates didn't see eye to eye, but that's part of the business. That's part of the game. But he's not saying anything. He's just sitting there being quiet, letting people speculate what's going on. You speak to the media, you clear all this up, it's done. Nobody talks about it anymore. And he declines to speak. But I think what the Eagles have to do right now is they have to cut ties with Carson Wentz. It's not going to work. And you can sit there, and Jeff Lurie and Harry Roseman can sit there and say, oh, we want Wentz back. We believe he can win the Super Bowl for the team. Listen, that's just speak. They know there's some problems going on in his locker room. And I heard the Eagles have hired Josh McDaniels. They talked for 8 hours yesterday. How do you sit down and have an interview for 8 hours? I don't get that myself, but that's another video for another day. But at the end of the day, if Wentz wants to remain the starting quarterback, you should fight for your job. Fight for it. And I think Carson Wentz thinks that he deserves it. He's from North, because in North Dakota, there was no competition in North Dakota. Now you got competition now. Now, if Wentz wants to really be the starting quarterback and then wants to prove people wrong, you got to go out there and you got to fight for it. Put your ego at the door. You ain't no better than nobody. You had a terrible season last year. You were the second worst quarterback in the league last year. Donovan McNabb had less talent than Wentz had, and Donovan McNabb guided his team to conference championship games for 4 years. And they didn't have a number one receiver or anything until T.O. came. And when T.O. came, he was hurt in the playoffs, and McNabb still got them to the Super Bowl. So don't hand me that, he didn't have any weapons on the field. McNabb had less than what Carson Wentz had. So I don't want to hear that. But Carson Wentz should just be quiet, clear this up, go out there, get back in the lab, work on your game, and go, fight for that starting quarterback role. If you want to be the quarterback so bad, you go and fight for it. Let people know that you're worthy, that you're good enough to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. But if you're just sitting there pouting and having people speak for you, you're not going to say anything, then guess what? You're not worthy to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. You're just a career backup at this point. But let me know what you think about this article. Do you agree that Wentz, the Eagles should cut ties from Wentz, or should he stay and fight for the position with Jalen Hurts or whoever the quarterback the Eagles are going to get? Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.